Rain battered the glass walls of the United Nations headquarters in New York as Ibrahim Traoré, now wearing the crisp black suit of a global diplomat rather than his military fatigues, stood before the General Assembly. It had taken a decade of geopolitical upheaval, the collapse of old alliances, and a rising tide of populist revolutions for the UN Charter to be rewritten. The Security Council, long paralyzed by vetoes and diplomatic impasses, had finally been abolished. Traoré had emerged from the heart of West Africa, not only as a symbol of resistance against neocolonial influence, but as the architect of a new internationalism. He was elected by a two-thirds majority as Secretary General under the revised charter, now a position with unprecedented executive powers. The Global South had rallied behind him, and many saw him as the last hope of a fractured world. As he spoke of peace, sovereignty, and equitable development, eyes from every corner of the globe watched, some with hope, others with dread. "We are no longer the pawns of superpowers," Traoré declared. His voice echoed through the assembly hall, silencing murmurs. From Accra to Caracas, from Aleppo to Addis Ababa, the people have risen. The United Nations must no longer be a mouthpiece for empire. It must be a sword for justice. The applause was thunderous from the African and Latin American delegations, cautious from Europe, and visibly reluctant from the U.S. and its allies. Sitting stiffly behind her desk, Ambassador Emily Rutherford of the United States whispered to her aide, "We may have just elected our greatest threat." Backdoor meetings began within hours. In a small, secure room deep inside the UN complex, Rutherford met with representatives from the UK, France, Japan, and India. Traoré wants to dismantle the old order, she warned. He talks about sovereignty, but make no mistake, this is about power. He is positioning the UN as a new global government, not a forum. We need to rein him in. Sir Malcolm Trent of the UK sighed. He has the support of too many. His narrative is magnetic. To oppose him openly would be political suicide in our parliaments. Then we do it quietly, Rutherford said. We expose contradictions, we bait him, we break the illusion. The first crack appeared when Traoré ordered the immediate deployment of blue helmets to the Amazon basin, bypassing bureaucratic protocols, claiming evidence of illegal resource extraction by multinational firms linked to several G7 nations. Brazil, under a populist coalition, supported the move, but media outlets in North America began spinning the intervention as neo-imperialism under a different guise. In a tense exchange broadcast globally, Rutherford confronted Traoré in a security briefing. Under whose authority are you deploying troops? The charter gives you executive power, yes, but not unilateral power. Traoré met her glare. I act under the authority of the people of the world. The days of procedure over justice are over. That's dictatorship, Rutherford hissed. Wrapped in the flag of revolution. The room fell into cold silence as Traoré leaned forward. Call it what you want, but I sleep with a conscience cleaner than your drone pilots. That line exploded across the world. Protests erupted both in support and condemnation. Conspiracy theories bloomed, some hailing Traoré as a liberator, others decrying him as a tyrant. In Africa, his image was painted on murals. In Washington, D.C., Senate hearings debated withdrawing from the UN entirely. A month later, the conflict escalated. After an anonymous leak revealed that several tech conglomerates had orchestrated coups in smaller nations to protect mining interests, Traoré invoked Emergency Article 7 and ordered the arrest of implicated CEO attending the World Economic Forum in Geneva. Swiss authorities, under immense pressure, complied. Financial markets plunged. The old elite screamed. Inside the walls of the UN, the war had turned digital. Cyber attacks hit the UN intranet. Misinformation campaigns surged. A faction of ambassadors led by India and Australia accused Traoré of centralizing too much authority and called for a referendum on revoking Article 7. In a closed-door emergency meeting, Traoré faced his most scathing challenge yet. "You cannot wield justice like a sword and expect no blood," said Ambassador Rajiv Batra of India. "We are diplomats, not executioners." "Then perhaps you chose the wrong profession." Traoré replied, "The world is bleeding. I am only cutting away the infection. Your infection is anyone who disagrees with you." As voices rose, so did suspicion. A confidential report surfaced implicating a covert operation, Project Phoenix, a coalition of intelligence agencies planning to depose Traoré under the guise of restoring balance. A whistleblower brought it to light, sparking chaos. Within hours, the Global South demanded the arrest of Rutherford and Trent. Accusations of coup plots spread like wildfire. "You're turning this place into a tribunal," Rutherford said in an emergency broadcast. "This is no longer the United Nations. It's the United Traoré Empire. If justice has a name, let it be mine," he responded, standing before the security atrium, banners of peace billowing behind him. But as the crisis peaked, the twist no one anticipated unraveled. One of Traoré's most trusted advisors, Fatima Ndour, a Senegalese diplomat known for her integrity and fierce intellect, resigned and held a press conference. "We created a leader of the people," she said, "but we forgot to bind him to the people. Ibrahim has become what he once fought. His vision is now absolute, his will unchecked. The revolution eats its young." Gasps echoed around the world. Suddenly, those closest to him began defecting. Protests surged even in the capitals that once praised him. The world stood still as Traoré appeared one last time at the UN podium. He spoke softly, eyes weary. "I thought justice meant speed. That peace needed a blade. But I see now, the moment I stopped listening, I became the very silence I sought to shatter." He placed his seal of office on the podium. "Let the world decide if it still needs a sword, or if it dares to wield a pen." And with that, Ibrahim Traoré walked away from the United Nations alone, leaving behind a world unsure whether it had lost a savior or been spared a despot. The fictional political drama is complete and formatted as requested. If you'd like to adapt this into a video script for your channel or expand on any part like backstories, conflicts, or the aftermath, I can help with that too. The corridors of the United Nations became increasingly tense. Ibrahim Traoré's decision to arrest corporate executives at the World Economic Forum had sent shockwaves through every global capital. Private jets fled Geneva under military escort, while the Swiss franc dipped for the first time in decades. In Washington, the National Security Council held an emergency session behind closed doors. Emily Rutherford stood at the head of the long oak table, a satellite image of UN blue helmets stationed outside lithium mines in Bolivia glowing behind her. "This is no longer about peacekeeping," she said. "He's militarizing the UN for ideological enforcement. We underestimated him. He's not a revolutionary, he's a tactician." "Then what's the play?" asked General Keith Rourke. "Regime change at Turtle Bay. We can't go in guns blazing. We delegitimize him, fracture his coalition from the inside. We bleed his narrative." Meanwhile, Traoré convened a secret summit at the newly formed United Nations Transitional Assembly in Nairobi, an alternate UN parliament dominated by states from the Global South. His inner circle now included a group of reformist leaders, Maria Ortega of Chile, Abdul Munif from Pakistan, and Jacques Ngoma of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Together, they called themselves the Pact of Rebirth. "The old order was built on our suffering," Traoré told them. "Now they call my justice tyranny. Let them. History will call it something else." But cracks were already forming. Behind closed doors, Ortega was alarmed. "You speak of justice, Ibrahim, but you offer no debate. You deploy without vote, indict without trial. We don't have time for the slowness of democracy." He shot back. "Justice delayed is justice denied." "You mean justice dictated," Ortega said. "That's what the West does. That's what you promised never to become." Their conversation was interrupted by urgent news. A terrorist bombing had occurred outside the UN peacebuilding office in Kinshasa. 47 dead. Traoré blamed Western-backed mercenaries. Rutherford, speaking before the UN media, accused Traoré's own forces of staging the attack to consolidate power. global opinion fractured sharply. In the streets of Lagos and Jakarta, crowds waved Traoré's banners. In Berlin and Ottawa, mass protests demanded withdrawal from what was being called the new United Nations. Leaked memos revealed that a covert team of intelligence operatives operating under Project Equilibrium had infiltrated Nairobi, with orders to destabilize the pact from within. Traoré's own intelligence chief, an enigmatic former spy named Kossi Atta, warned him, "They will not fight you in open war. They will rot your foundation, and I fear they've already started." Indeed, betrayal was brewing. Abdul Munif began secret communications with Indian and Israeli envoys. Jacques Ngoma, increasingly disillusioned, started leaking internal meeting recordings to the press. A diplomatic scandal exploded when audio surfaced of Traoré allegedly calling some member states irrelevant pawns. He denied the recordings, fabrications, he said. They fear the end of their empire, but the damage was done. Ortega resigned from the Pact of Rebirth in a live broadcast, stating, "I joined a vision. I won't serve a throne." Soon after, a no-confidence motion was filed within the Transitional Assembly. Pro-Traoré and anti-Traoré blocs prepared for a public confrontation. The air in Nairobi turned electric. Rumors swirled of a military coup. At 2 a.m., drones circled over the UN Nairobi compound. Internet was cut. And for the first time since the new charter, the United Nations faced what no one had imagined: a siege on its own soil. And in that moment, Ibrahim Traoré, once the world's hope, stared out from his bulletproof office window, watching the city flicker like a flame about to go out. The siege at Nairobi was more than just a physical confrontation. It was a battle for the soul of the new world order. Traoré's communications team scrambled to restore links with the outside world, but every message seemed drowned in chaos and suspicion. The Transitional Assembly's chamber was locked down, voices echoing off marble walls in fierce debate. Ambassador Maria Ortega, now a leading voice of opposition, faced Traoré across the virtual divide, their video link crackling but no less charged. "You claim to lead with justice, Ibrahim, yet your methods mirror those you once condemned. This siege, your clampdown, it's tyranny in disguise." Traoré's gaze hardened. "I inherited a broken system, Maria. If that means shaking foundations, so be it. I do not fear the truth, but I do not cower before those who would burn the world down for their interests. Your revolution is bleeding the people it swore to serve. You've silenced journalists, imprisoned dissidents. You threaten democracy itself. Democracy without justice is a farce. Your West clings to hollow rhetoric while puppeteering regimes and draining resources." The line went dead as Ortega was abruptly cut off. Outside the chamber, murmurs of a planned insurrection against Traoré grew louder. Meanwhile, Ambassador Emily Rutherford leveraged this moment to address the General Assembly with renewed fervor. "Colleagues," she began, her voice steady yet sharp, "we face a crisis not just of leadership but of legitimacy. Traoré's unilateral actions endanger global peace. The UN must uphold its principles, not become an instrument of a single man's agenda." Behind the scenes, a covert alliance was forming. Indian intelligence operatives met with French and Israeli counterparts in a dimly lit Parisian cafe, plotting to sway key Transitional Assembly members and disrupt Traoré's inner circle. Even Fatima Ndur, once Traoré's closest confidante, now worked quietly to broker dialogue between warring factions, fearing the entire structure could collapse into chaos. As Nairobi's compound was cut off from reinforcements, Traoré found himself isolated but defiant. One night, in a rare moment of vulnerability, he confided in Kossi Atta, "I built this dream on the backs of the oppressed, and yet I am betrayed from within. How do we become the enemy?" Kossi's expression was grim. "Because power, even wielded with good intentions, corrupts. And those who fear losing their place will do anything to take it from you." Days later, a daring attempt to storm the UN compound unfolded. Armed insurgents clashed with blue helmets. Fires raged in the surrounding streets, and the world watched live feeds of Nairobi burning. But the real battle was psychological. News outlets broadcast leaked footage showing Traoré holding secret meetings with paramilitary leaders, deepening the mistrust. The crescendo came when Fatima Ender publicly announced she was resigning her UN post entirely. "I believed in Ibrahim Traoré's vision," she said to the press, "but today I mourn the man he has become. This is no longer a fight for justice, it is a fight for power, and power, unchecked, is the most dangerous weapon of all." Her words struck like thunder. Several key Transitional Assembly members followed suit. The coalition that once seemed invincible was fracturing rapidly. In a last-ditch speech to the Assembly, Traoré's voice echoed with fatigue but unwavering conviction. "I do not seek power for myself," he said. "I seek a world where no child is born into chains of inequality. If my fall can bring that world closer, then I accept it." As he stepped down from the podium, the room was torn between applause and anger. The future of the United Nations and the world hung precariously in the balance. The world held its breath as Ibrahim Traoré's resignation reverberated through the chambers of the Transitional Assembly. Yet, even in stepping down, he refused to disappear quietly into the shadows. His departure was not an admission of defeat, but a calculated move, a gambit in a game where the rules were still being written. Behind the scenes, his loyalists fortified positions within UN peacekeeping forces scattered around Africa and Asia, awaiting orders that no one outside his closest circle knew. The media frenzy spun tales of Traoré's downfall, painting him as a revolutionary undone by his own ambition. Emily Rutherford claimed a strategic victory for the defense of democracy, while Maria Ortega rallied international support to rebuild what she called a broken institution. Yet, whispers of Traoré's next steps traveled like wildfire through diplomatic channels and intelligence networks. What no one expected was the explosion of a series of cyberattacks that crippled the UN communications infrastructure worldwide, sending a chilling message. The old order might be broken, but the new order was far from finished. In a clandestine meeting on the outskirts of Geneva, Traoré met with an enigmatic figure, an anonymous operative whose allegiance was as murky as the shifting alliances surrounding the UN. "You underestimated the reach of the pact," Traoré said quietly. "I've seeded the seeds of change beyond the borders of Nairobi. They think this is over. It has only just begun." The operative nodded. "Your vision is dangerous, Ibrahim, but so is the stagnation you fight against. What's your next move?" Traoré's eyes burned with determination. "To ensure the voices of the oppressed are no longer whispers in the halls of power. To rebuild the United Nations, not as a playground for empires, but as a true global democracy. And if that means burning down the old world to light the way, then so be it." Back in New York, as diplomats scrambled to restore order, a sudden announcement shattered the fragile calm. A previously unknown coalition, calling themselves the Global People's Assembly, claimed responsibility for the cyberattacks and declared their intent to dismantle the corrupt international elite by any means necessary. Their manifesto echoed many of Traoré's ideals, though their methods were far more radical. At that moment, as world leaders gathered for an emergency summit, the screen flickered and a live feed from Traoré himself appeared, broadcasting worldwide for the first time since his resignation. "Ibrahim Traoré is not a man, but a movement," he proclaimed. "The future belongs not to those who cling to power, but to those who dare to change it. This is not the end, it is the beginning." The feed cut abruptly to black, leaving the world to wonder, was this the dawn of a new era or the descent into chaos?